Even before name, image, and likeness, athletes were brands. They're businesses, but they're also people. One of the men who helped set Rashan Gary on the path that he's on with his businesses joins us on today's show to talk about the evolution of name, image, and likeness and the learning curve that these athletes face. It's a different kind of topic that we haven't tackled on Locked On Packers in the past, and I'm excited to bring it to you today on Locked On Packers.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Robert Greene is on the show today, the players rep, and he is one of Rashan Gary's business partners, helps run RG Sports, which is the Rashan Gary businesses. And I wanted to be able to provide this because, contract negotiations, as we get into the draft season, name, image, and likeness, these are all things that have affected the landscape around these players. And I wanted to try and provide another layer for these players from a fan perspective to say, okay, I understand that they are more than just athletes. They are these other things. They're worried about these other things as well. And it's important that we remember that these players, this is their earning window in a lot of ways. And I think sometimes we forget that part of it. So Robert is here to help us as someone who has experienced it. He is a former college football player himself who now helps athletes through this financial literacy and all the advising that he does. So I'm excited for that part of the conversation. Just to follow up on our conversation yesterday about Joe Barry, we got reporting from Adam Schefter that Brandon Staley not expected to be a candidate in Green Bay. Joe Barry could potentially remain within the organization in some capacity, some form or function. And Dave Canales was hired in Carolina, which means unless Ejiro Evero gets the Seahawks job, it is most likely he is going to stay in Carolina. That's another defensive coordinator that the Packers could hire. That is taken off the board. In addition, Raheem Morris, the Rams defensive coordinator, headed to Atlanta to become the head coach. So Sean McVay is looking for a defensive coordinator. That is going to be a very appealing position, someone with whom the Packers will be competing. And Mike McDaniel and the Dolphins allow Vic Fangio to get out of his deal to go be the Eagles defensive coordinator, which means Mike McDaniel is now looking for a new defensive coordinator as well. So some more competition on the market. We have at this point very little, if any, reporting about who the candidates in Green Bay are going to be. Although our America's Guest and my partner over at The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to, Jason Hirschhorn, he's got his ear to the ground. He is efforting all sorts of reporting and information that he's gonna give to us. Perhaps a conversation that he and I have next week here on this show, but a piece coming very soon to The Leap. And thanks to everyone who has really supported us at The Leap. We've seen huge growth here over the last couple of months. And I just want to shout out everyone who has done that. Let's get into my conversation with Robert. Joining me now, Robert Greene, who is the COO at RG Sports, which is Rashan Gary's business. They do a lot over at RG Sports. And Robert, it is great to be with you because I wanted to get your help as we head into this offseason with the Green Bay Packers, because there's a lot of things at play here. A lot of conversations that are going to get had about contracts and businesses and name, image, and likeness as to why the draft looks like it does. And so I was hoping that you could help shed some light on some of these topics that don't normally get discussed. Let's go back a little bit. You've been with Rashan since he was what, 16 years old?
Yeah, basically last year, high school graduation, if you will, and through the college process to where you are now.
And so he was very early in understanding, hey, I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman, right? It's that line of like, okay, I am an athlete, but that makes me a business. What were those early conversations with him like, and how much of it is like Rashan understanding, like as an 18, 19-year-old kid, hey, there's like, I got to set myself up for the future.
Absolutely. So essentially what I do as an advisor in the sports business, what people was doing is my company pre-post game, they would compensate us to teach them the sports business. And one of the things that athletes don't understand when they want to get to a certain level is the process and the steps. So a lot of people talk about all the time, trust the process, but I'm the mindset that say trust the facts, and they're providing those facts for the athlete. But the thing is, it's not a one-stop shop. Each athlete has a different path, a different circumstances, a different environment, different things that they want to accomplish. So the first thing that we would do and that I did with Rashan is basically ask him a simple question. What do you want to do when you grow up? And his response was be a professional athlete. So now as a high-level fiduciary advisor, my next response was, so I said, you want to be a multi-millionaire? And his response is, yes, sir. So again, understanding that, then I returned from the educational standpoint of the development, start talking about, well, this is how long a career may be, how your body may respond to that when you're no longer playing. There's a thing called taxes as well, based on where you're at. NFL, United States government has certain states that have income tax, millionaire tax, progressive tax, all these different things that literally he had no idea about. Trying to get to the end, but not understand all the different things that come along with it. Because most athletes don't have advisors or basically have universities teach you, help you understand those things, then essentially the reality is you're going to lose more times than not, because you basically, in a business term, ROI, return of investment, you're about to invest 15 to 17 years only to get on average 2.5. And so now when you start talking to a Rashan, a kid at that level like that, it starts to set in, because it's like now all of a sudden he's not looking at it as business. He's looking at it as my life, how I want to get to where I want to be. And now I'm giving the answers to the test, how to be successful in that. And that's where the buy-in came in. I didn't know Rashan from Adam. I didn't know his parents. I had no relationship whatsoever. So there was no referral from him to me based on how most of these things go. What I simply came and spoke about was the value proposition that pre-post game can provide to you to get you to where you want to be. And we laid that out and worked ourselves back. So to not overwhelm anyone, including the parent at that level, we say start with the end in mind. And then we focus on planning, executing the actual task at hand right from there. And we've been pretty successful with that, Rashan, thus far.
So before you can get set about to plan, first you have to educate, right? Like you have to help. And this is true of a lot of people. I'm sure when I was 16, 17, 18, I needed a lot of help on understanding financial literacy. Like that, it seems like that's where you have to start here, especially now, because name, image, and likeness means these kids are getting money at 17, 18. And I know I would not have been good with it. I would have needed a lot of help.
Absolutely right. So what we say and what is factual is that we actually started with their calling name, image, and likeness. Why we say that's because that logo that you see on my chest and the one that's been on Rashan's platform since he was in college, that's the first logo that was actually IP protected for Rashan, as long as his name, understanding that where he was trying to go and be, understanding how things were changing pertaining to technology, understanding how he was operating in public speaking, being dyslexic, understanding that when he gets where he needs to be at that standpoint, that people are going to remember what he does and what he put out there well past the time when he's no longer playing. So when we made the decision to go about doing those things, that's how it kind of led to where we are now with RG Sports. Simply saying is that when you start to build where you want to be, and I remember like it was yesterday, when we made the announcement, the first video announcement there was with his logo on, basically through his YouTube channel, teaching name, image, and likeness to people essentially by saying like, hey, this is my life. This is what I want to do. We didn't call any of the local reporters on the NFL Network or any of the Josina Andersons, and we are the source of RG Sports. And then we understanding our platform that we started to build, that once we made that announcement, now it's going to put eyeballs back on us. And many people, again, I like to name names. I don't do sources. So like a Darren Ravel and a bunch of other people that's prominent with a lot of followers say, what is he thinking? And then I said to myself, and I'm thinking like, well, did this athlete, this young man go to school for education? Did this young man not go to college? Any other young man across the country go to school to try to understand what they want to do when they grow up? Do they not go to class and learn and be educated on that? Or why is it when an athlete now all of a sudden comes and says that I am doing this, everyone laughed at it? But I'll say this. Also, when you teach someone how to conduct the interview process, there's some tools, some steps, some questions you need to ask. So when Rashan Gary asked all the biggest agencies in the world, Rosenhouse Sports, Athletes First, Rock Nation, remember, Rashan been in demand since the time he was in 8th grade. So the reality is, if you're going to give them the answer to the test and then all of a sudden say you're going to charge him for it, that's not very wise. So when Rashan Gary says to you, what round I'm going to be drafted, and they say, oh, absolutely, your first round. That's great. Now tell me what you're going to do for me without mentioning anybody else's name. What's your plan for me? And it's crickets. This is what became RT Sports, because he already had a plan. And those that basically he sought to figure out if they had a better plan had none. And like I said, as they say, the rest is history.
We'll be back in just a second here on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at BetterHelp. You always want to be the best version of yourself. And sometimes we all need an opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking about the same thing this week. The Packers can still absolutely take a receiver in this upcoming NFL draft, even high. If Keon Coleman fouls them in the first round, take that guy. Okay, I feel much better. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports teams, and it's important to get things off our chest every once in a while. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. So visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. And today's episode also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The playoffs, they're coming to an end. This is the last playoff game, technically, before the Super Bowl coming up here on Sunday. So you are running out of opportunities to bet on NFL action, at least for a while here in 2024. And right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. Same game parlays. I love a same game parlay. New bets in the Explore tab. Parlays in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. We got a ton of basketball there. Bucks futures, not great value on Bucks futures, but I would be betting Bucks games because they're still a little undervalued right now. They're getting that post-Griff bounce. Let's go. Giannis, All-Star, Dame, All-Star. Okay. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today, here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Yeah. And so we've seen now, since then, the changing landscape around name, image, and likeness. The coaches don't seem to love it for reasons that I think are obvious around. They were the ones getting paid before. They were in control of where everyone was going. And now all of a sudden it's the players who are in charge. Did you see, even at the time when you guys started, even just like what you were able to do, because the rules were different when Rashan was in college, what you guys were doing, did people notice it in a positive or a negative way?
Peter, you said the rules are different. Were they different? Or do most people don't know the rules?
Okay.
I know the rules. And the reality is and I'll use a transfer portal for a perfect example. When I, again, pre-post game CEO is contracted or consulting someone, they ask about going to another school, and they talk about the NLI, or the NLI, National Letter of Intent, which is a one-way legal document, binding document. Why was that document put in place, and how does it get signed? When you basically now market, or you go out there, recruit an athlete, if you will, and then all of a sudden now the coach gets you to sign that way in advance, let's say 3-4 months in advance. You no longer have to spend $1 in marketing that athlete, because based on that document, now you as the athlete at one point could not go anywhere else, even though that coach and the NCAA knew you were leaving to go somewhere else. Even in certain areas when that coach was able to get you to come to that actual university, which had bonuses to their contract, they will leave without saying goodbye, and you will be stuck. A lot of these kids at the same time are minors. So we're talking in legal terms, under duress. So when you talk about how these things really work, and then a guy like me educating the advisor on working on their behalf, saying, no, we're not doing that. Because the reality is you knew you were leaving. So you're going to let him up out of that contract. He's going to be able to go to another school, because nowhere else in America can you all of a sudden take an athlete and say an athlete is not a human being. An athlete in this state that can get paid to basically create Facebook or X or Instagram, because they now play a basketball, sport, or football, whatever it may be, then now you can no longer have the same rights as them. Now, a lot of people didn't understand too. They skirted this rule a long time. So we're talking about football and basketball, the majority of the revenue is being generated.
Right.
But people don't realize Olympic athletes been getting paid. Baseball players were allowed to have agents way before. And they also talking about the one and done rule. So every rule that was put in place, basically separating basketball and football from everything else, was set to keep the unpaid labor, if you will, generating and driving revenue. So when you mention NIL again, when I said it never existed, it was a term that basically the alternative to what pre-post game was doing without basically asking for permission. We were operating based off state laws, human being, professional development, human rights protections, and there was no university, no coach can supersede that. So just like in simplest terms, if you want to get Geico for your car insurance or Progressive, there's no coach, because they have a deal with the university to tell you now you can't use Progressive. But that's exactly how it was going when you talk about LOV, loss of value, going back to Leonard Fournette, or PTD, permanent disability. So just so you know, I've been involved and been in this space and involved with those things going way back before any of these things now, what they call it NIL. That's why I said it really doesn't exist. What now exists is actually professional development. And those young men or women that's going to get compensated for their name, image, and likeness. Once again, if it's not a collegiate thing, you will not have a name, image, and likeness. It belonged to us since birth. We signed that back over to universities, to NIL collectives, to these experts for pennies to the dollar, because we don't understand our business. Rashan doesn't have that issue. So that's why when people was talking about, I'm getting out the 12th topic, but the Wonderlic 9, he's dyslexic. We understand that. So as his advisor, we had a decision to make. You understand the combine. What do we focus on? Public speaking, interview process, understanding the teams that may be drafting you, or a time-based test that's set up to basically have you fail being dyslexic. Because the people at certain universities didn't understand dyslexia did not mean you could not read. This is an education, institution of higher learning, did not understand dyslexia had nothing to do with reading. Those are things that he would talk way back when, to understand the people that he around and who really helped him get where he needed to be going forward.
Why do you think that as these states have said, hey, we want to allow athletes to benefit financially from their name, image, and likeness, why haven't there been more, whether it's at the university level, at the NCAA level, whether it's at the states who are saying we are allowing this, but here's how we can help? Why don't you think more resources are being given to these student athletes? Or do you think that there is a benefit to letting it be the wild, wild west from a powerful perspective, from the coaches, from the NCAA, from, Congress, whatever?
We're in the United States of America. And I'm not going to go on a long diatribe, but the NCAA was founded in 1906, as well as Leavenworth Prison. This is right after when, slaves were freed, and you're talking about education and development and how we got to the point where sports really developed to do. When you talked about getting education as a former athlete myself, understanding the type of degrees that we get, the type of classes that we have, that literally did not set us up for success long-term past the time that we played. A lot of those programs are put in place. Now, mind you, all these schools are 501c3. So this is before, even back when the NFL 2014 was listed as a 501c3, then it got out and everybody said, no, you can't be. Universities the same way. College sports going all the way along. Now, again, you got stadiums with 100,000+ people. They generating money from vendors, beer, parking, advertising, all these different things that was going on in that standpoint. And then they say they're giving the athlete an education. Most of the athletes, unfortunately, from a lot of areas in this country, whether they're rural country or urban, they basically, most of their scholarship, if you want to call it that, was paid by financial aid. Their mama and their dad being poor had nothing to do with the university basically cutting them a check in their standpoint, despite what they want to tell you to the masses. So no matter who you are, if your son, when they grow up, want to go to college, he has to fill out a FAFSA form. These are the type of things that we teach from that standpoint. Because if it was about a scholarship, then don't give me a FAFSA. If you're paying for everything, don't give me anything. Don't have me write down my information, Social Security, where I live at, and all those different things. So it goes to the census. So now the government can cut a check back to this 501c3. You tell me how much you're doing for me while I'm driving revenue for these T-shirts and all these other things that are going on from there. Then mind you, when the donors give $10 million to the school, they had the kids come sign autographs back in the day, knowing where they headed. Then all of a sudden they take those same things that they basically had them sign, then they sell them back to vendors and memorabilia folks for profit. So the reality is, I understand all of that. And in the most recent scenario, I helped form what we have today. So when you ask that question about why they don't do that, because the reality is that this perfect example, Nick Saban, many say he left because he didn't like NIL, but the same way he didn't like it, he went to Washington. Now, once again, no one gave the young man, Michael Penix Jr., a $20 million buyout check for going after tearing 2 ACLs. And then I'm telling you right now, the NFL don't care nothing about how great he played in his team in Washington. They did see him holding his ribs, though. So when the Senior Bowl comes around, if he can't throw right and he falls 2 or 3 spots, that's millions. But at the same time, when you now have a coach in Washington who had players who came and stayed there, he left the job Alabama in less than a week. And no one had a problem with that, adult-wise. But then at the same time, another coach just left another group of kids and went and got paid in Washington. So the reality is all the people that literally have problems with athletes doing what they're doing because at the end of the day, unpaid labor is always designed in the collegiate model to do exactly what someone tell you to do, not what's best for you. That's what this is all about. That's why what NIL is what they call it now, is because what we did with Rashan, no one's going to tell me what I can't do. Not the NCAA, not Congress. So that's what I'm saying today. They begging for Congress to come and step in. Congress cannot basically write a bill to create indentured servitude in the United States in 2024. Because essentially, that's what it would be. You'd be an indentured servant to say, like, yeah, Peter, you can go ahead and do this podcast, and you can get paid for this in that standpoint. But if you shoot a basketball, if you swing a bat, no. We're gonna stop you from doing. All you can do was so much from there. And then you're gonna say, well, we only can hold you for 20 hours. 20 hours you have to do. Well, we know the strength coaches don't have that curriculum. So you build facilities now that are paid for through taxpayer money, not for profit, and you make it where the strength coaches are looking down on you, and they can say, "Well, yeah, we're not holding it against you because you're not here." No, they got cameras everywhere. And trust and believe, when it comes down time for practice, you wasn't there. They got something stored for you. All these things are now being exposed of what, quote unquote, they call it NIL. And for those that don't understand in Congress, or those that want to call themselves experts, collectors, like I said before, if you and I have a deal to go on right now, and I got something valuable to you, or you got some value to me, even better, do you want somebody to get between me giving you money that you earned, Peter, and call it a collective?
But no, I'd much rather just do it, because I know that there's going to be hidden costs in there that I'm going to have to foot if there's a third party involved.
You are the best person to represent and take care of your business. You don't need someone in between now cutting your costs and your margins. Meanwhile, without you, the percentage of what you earn is zero. But now you have them telling you that they're in the best interest of you. So all these different acronyms and terms that they're coming up with is basically designed to basically now, when they realize the NCAA jig is up, to try to basically capture these athletes back in another form where they don't really understand what's going on. But as I said before, name, image, and likeness is nothing more, in real words and real terms, as employment. Only in the United States of America, where you want everybody to pay taxes, talking about the actual capitalism and talking about the economy, where so many people are fighting to keep 17 to 21-year-olds actually paying taxes. Think about that for a second. Nowhere else Are you saying that you want able-bodied people not to pay taxes on something that they're getting? But yet you got players in college now for 9 years. So we know now it's exposed. It's not about education. It's not about basically sitting there about the team winning. And at the same time, 2 years ago, we don't need no more than 4 teams. We don't need no more than 4 teams in the college football playoff. No more than that. It's way too many when it was the SEC invitation. Now when these kids skip the bowl games, per the player's rep, skipping the bowl game, now we need 12. Because they assuming, again, that the uneducated, uninformed, underrepresented athlete is going to chase a ring. So the 15-0 Michigan Wolverines now, next year, they have that same process, will now be playing 17 games. 17 games, and you trying to go to the NFL? Did they account for now going to a Senior Bowl or a Shrine Game? Did it account for your body recovering after that time? Did it account for you going to a rookie mini after the draft, a combine, rookie mini camp, OTAs, 3 preseason games? And if you like Rashan, who was trained and taught this, played your first 3 years in the NFL playing 20 games, 2019 NFC Championship, same thing in 2020. And everybody talk about Rashan and in certain areas about him being injured. Like, please. When he got hurt in Seattle, he came back the next week. He spent his entire years going through the draft process, training his body mentally and physically for what we knew may and could happen. Now, you're telling college kids that they need to risk arm and limbs for cotton T-shirts and aluminum rings when the NFL is going to say, oh, that's just too bad. So when I say NIL, let's not basically continue to put this in a box and say it's about college athletes. NIL belongs to everyone. We all have the ability to grow and maximize. Like I said, Locked On Packers could be the biggest podcast in the world. No one can tell you can't do that in your name, image, and likeness. But that's what they want to frame it as. So basically, they can kind of control the narrative for those that are walking through it.
All right, more to come with our conversation with Robert Greene here on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. That's why Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. You can win up to 25 times your money. So what are you waiting for? Just pick a couple players, 2 to 6, to make a lineup, and you decide if you think they're going to produce more or less than the stat projections set by Prize Picks. And you pick which one you want to do. You want to pick Christian McCaffrey, 75 rushing yards? You want to pick Patrick Mahomes, passing touchdowns? You got a lineup. And now you're having fun. $10 can get you $250 if you put together the right lineup. PrizePicks now offers Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. And thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, Locked On Sports Today. Here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. I do have a pretty good jumper though, so like if they want to tell me I can't shoot out, like I'm gonna keep playing basketball. Like they can't stop me.
We won't pay for it to see it.
Let's finish up here with this question, because I think there are a lot from the outside that we don't get to see, we don't know, and I know probably a little bit more than the average, but only like a little, like a fraction, just because this is what I do, and it matters to what we talk about here. But what is the thing that you would say, okay, if I could just let fans in on this thing, it would really be beneficial to them to understand, the business that these players are ultimately in?
Okay. So the best way to say that is to tell all fans and basically human beings, employment, your job. So we teach this, so we're not apologizing for it. But I taught Rashan way back when that no matter if it's college, high school, pros. You want to call them teammates, I call them coworkers. You want to call them coaches, I call them employers. Because the reality is understanding how you go to work and how you conduct your business, whether it's showing up on time, whether it's having attention to detail, whether it's making it to the point where at the end of the day, no one's going to outwork you. That's going to pay off in the long term, whether you play sports, you don't play sports. So at the end of the day, those same fans that like to critique these athletes in particular have to understand. Imagine going to work every day, you just doing your job that they pay you to do, and someone in that next cubicle is criticizing what you do constantly and basically trying to tell you what you should be doing and not doing. But the reality is you're not going to do that because guess what? They paying them and they paying you. So when it comes to athletes, you want them to really invest in what you're saying, whether it's your fantasy leagues and things of that nature. You're not understanding they're going to work every day. And if they don't do the job they're supposed to the way they need to, then their employers are going to move on. And that's why I try to explain to guys and even the people that they have around them in their circles. Social media is very dangerous these days. Like, because when people just talk like they normally would talk, and let's say all of a sudden now and you see what's going on in situations with the Cowboys and things of that nature, and people speaking out, well, you affect another person's salary. There can be some legal ramifications for that. Don't think because you are a teammate of that person that they don't look at you as a coworker. And now if you're affecting their bottom line, if it was us, I can guarantee you, because in the same way, it's like the same thing with these sources. People have gotten away by saying things such as Rashan Gary is going to need surgery at the end of the season, the eve of the draft, which was never the case. So I want to make sure I get that on record, publicly speaking, because the reality is, although we are ecstatic that we became Green Bay Packers, go Pack go, but at the same time, if you think that statement didn't affect him being there, the reality is it did. And those sources that you say, eventually what's going to happen is somebody going to say, you're going to have to report those sources, or you and your sources is going to be litigated. You're going to lose because it's not going to be hard to find that you affected their bottom line. So being a professional ain't just about basically going out there and doing the job at hand, running and jumping, getting sacks. Professionals understanding that people ain't going to like what you do all the time. They're not going to respect what you do all the time. But at the same time, you get up every day and you go do it anyway because you take care of you and your family. So that's what I would hope fans will understand that at the end of the day, we not, it's a form of entertainment, but for the guys that play and spend, like I said, in business sense, 18 years to get their return on their investment, they did it in mind, basically what they were trying to accomplish. And sometimes it don't go the way you wanted to from the team standpoint, but for the ones that are still there getting paid to cut a check, they're trying, they're doing their best. So whether it's the kicker from Buffalo or the kicker from the Packers, they don't want that to happen. But the reality is at the end of the day, because your parlay didn't end up the way you need to be, I'm speaking as a player's rep. We don't care, nor should they care. Nor should they get depressed, nor should they lose sleep, nor should they be contemplating hurting themselves. Because a lot of people don't understand when you do that to people who are not mentally strong, like Rashan Gary is, then at the end of the day, it can cause huge ramifications down the road. So as a human being, I want people to be aware that literally that you got a job, they got a job, we got a job. We do it to the best of our ability, just like they do, just like you do. And we always want them to respect that if they possibly can.
Yeah, just because their job affects your emotional well-being does not give you the right to try and affect theirs. I think that is an easy way of framing all of that. And that is true whether it's a Packer, whether it's a Bill, whether it's anybody. Just let's treat each other like human beings. That would be great. Robert, this was great. Thank you so much. I appreciate the insight that you've offered, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Go Pack, go.
All right. Thanks to Robert for joining the show. Great to talk with him. Rashan Gary, ahead of his time, seems like, which is very cool. He's still a young guy. That's the crazy thing. Still a very young guy. So hopefully a long Packers career in front of him. And that stuff about the shoulder, like, is that out there? That's not a lot. I don't know if there's a lot out there about what's going on with his shoulder at the draft. Like, I remember that happening, but it sounds like they thought he was going to go higher, and that made him fall to the Packers. So what? A fortuitous set of circumstances there. Back next week. More on the coaching search, this defensive coordinator coaching search. The Combine is just a couple weeks away. The Super Bowl, of course, coming up. I will be in Vegas for the Super Bowl, so we'll get some players, maybe some celebrities. We'll see what we can get. We'll see who's there. We'll see what's popping. I'll be there. I know that. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook, subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts, you can find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to come hang out with us live, when you pick a new defensive coordinator, we will be live, baby, on our YouTube channel. This Joe Barry live, we had 9:30 East, 8:30 Lambeau time. And it's creeping up there among our most watched lives ever. So obviously not live anymore, but just more people watch the Joe Barry episode than the post 49ers episode, which I don't know, kind of makes sense actually when I think about it. So go subscribe over on our YouTube page so you can stay Locked On Packers.